The poor cowboy was hiding a dark past. The sun was slowly setting over the dry lands near the small town of Dustwood. The sky looked orange and dusty, as if the whole world had been painted with sand. A lonely cowboy was riding slowly on an old brown horse. Both the man and the horse looked tired, as if they had traveled for many long days without proper rest. The cowboy did not look like someone who belonged to a town. His clothes were simple, faded, and slightly torn from travel. His hat covered most of his face, but anyone who looked closely could see that he was young, yet his eyes looked older than his age. There was something quiet and heavy about him, like he was carrying a memory he did not want to share. He finally reached the entrance of Dustwood. A wooden sign swayed gently in the wind. It creaked as the cowboy stopped his horse for a moment and looked at the town. Dustwood was small, with a few wooden buildings, a dusty road, and people moving slowly in the warm evening light. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, or at least that was what it looked like. The cowboy stepped down from his horse. He patted the animal gently and whispered, "We rest here." His voice was calm but low, like he had not spoken much for a long time. He then walked his horse toward the stable near the center of town. People noticed him immediately. In small towns like Dustwood, a new face was always noticed. The local shopkeeper paused while arranging goods outside his store. A group of children stopped playing and stared quietly. Even the wind seemed to slow down, as if the town itself was curious about the stranger. The cowboy did not try to attract attention. He kept his head down and avoided eye contact. When asked his name by the stable owner, he replied simply, "Evan Cole." Nothing more. No story, no background, no smile, just a name. Evan paid for a simple place for his horse and walked away without saying anything else. He did not go to the inn or the saloon like other travelers. Instead, he looked for small jobs around town. He needed food, water, and a place to stay, but he did not seem interested in comfort or luxury. By the next morning, Evan had already started working. He helped fix a broken fence at the edge of town. The farmer who hired him was surprised at how quickly and carefully Evan worked. His hands were skilled, even though he never spoke much. Later that day, he helped carry heavy water barrels for a family whose well had dried up. He did it without asking for extra payment. People in Dustwood started talking about him. They could not understand why a young cowboy with such skills would live like a poor wanderer. Some said he might be running from trouble. Others said he might simply be a quiet man who preferred to be alone. The town's sheriff also noticed Evan. Sheriff Miller was an experienced man with sharp eyes and a calm attitude. He had seen many travelers come and go, but something about Evan made him curious. The sheriff tried to talk to him one afternoon while Evan was repairing a stable door. "You're good with your hands," the sheriff said. Evan only nodded slightly without stopping his work. "You looking for steady work?" the sheriff asked again. Evan paused for a moment, then replied, "Just passing through." The sheriff studied him carefully, but did not push further. Still, he made a mental note. There was something unusual about this quiet cowboy. Not dangerous, but different, like someone who had learned to hide his thoughts very well. As the days passed, Evan continued to live quietly in Dustwood. He never caused trouble. He never argued. He never stayed in one place too long. He worked during the day and stayed alone at night. Instead of staying at the inn, he often slept in a small, quiet corner near the stables where his horse was kept. At night, when the town became silent, Evan would sit alone and look at the stars. The sky seemed endless, and sometimes his eyes would not blink for a long time. It was as if he was remembering something far away, something from a life he no longer spoke about. Once, a young boy from the town saw him sitting there. The boy was curious and asked, "Mister, why do you always sit alone?" Evan looked at the boy for a moment and then gave a small, soft reply. "Some people are just used to quiet places." The boy did not fully understand, but he nodded and ran back home. Days turned into a week. Evan Cole became a familiar but still mysterious figure in Dustwood. People knew him, but no one truly knew him. He was kind, helpful, and respectful. Yet there was always distance around him, like an invisible wall he never let anyone cross. And deep inside Evan's silence, something from his past was still waiting, something he had not told anyone in Dustwood, not even his own shadow. Days passed in Dustwood, and the quiet cowboy named Evan Cole slowly became a familiar sight in the small town. People no longer saw him as a complete stranger, but still, no one could say they truly knew him. He worked hard, spoke little, and lived even less for himself. His life was simple, yet something about him still felt unfinished, like a story waiting for a missing page. The town began to accept him in small ways. Farmers called him when something needed fixing. Shopkeepers nodded when he walked by. Even children, who were once shy around him, started to smile when they saw him. Evan never asked for attention, but his actions naturally earned respect. Still, Dustwood was a place where curiosity never stayed quiet for long. One morning, a traveling merchant arrived in town. He brought goods, stories, and news from faraway places. The man set up his wagon near the main road, calling out to customers. People gathered around, interested in what he had brought. Evan was passing by when the merchant suddenly stopped talking, his eyes fixed on Evan for a moment. The air around them felt different, like a memory had been disturbed. "You," the merchant said slowly, but then he paused. His expression changed quickly, as if he had said too much already. Evan stopped walking. He looked at the merchant calmly, but his eyes became slightly tense. "You must be mistaken," Evan said in a low voice. The merchant forced a small smile. "Yes, maybe I am," he replied, but his voice did not sound fully convinced. After a short silence, the merchant turned away and continued selling his goods. But something about that moment stayed in the air. Evan walked away without another word, but his mind was no longer calm. By evening, the merchant had already packed his things. He left Dustwood earlier than planned, saying he had another town to visit. However, some people noticed that he looked nervous, as if he wanted to leave quickly. Before leaving, he was seen whispering something to another traveler, but no one heard clearly what was said. That same night, Dustwood felt unusually quiet. Evan sat near the stables like he always did, but his thoughts were heavier than usual. The wind moved slowly, and the stars above looked distant. For the first time in days, he did not seem at peace. The next morning brought another strange moment. A young boy from the town, the same boy who had spoken to Evan before, ran excitedly through the street. He was talking loudly about something he had heard from an older traveler resting at the inn. The boy stopped near a group of townspeople and said, "I heard something interesting. That cowboy, Evan, he once helped save people during a big cattle stampede in the north town." People turned to listen. The boy continued, full of excitement. "The traveler said there was a man just like him. Same name, same skills. He stopped the stampede all alone." Some people smiled at the story, thinking it was just an exaggerated tale. Others looked curious. But Evan, who was nearby repairing a wooden cart, slowly stopped his work. He did not look angry. He did not look proud either. He simply looked uncomfortable. "That's not me," Evan said quietly without turning around. The boy frowned. "But he said," Evan gently interrupted, "people mistake others sometimes." His voice was calm, but there was a small distance in it, like he wanted the topic to end quickly. The boy nodded slowly and ran off again, but the story had already spread a little through the town. In small places like Dustwood, even small rumors could grow quickly. By afternoon, people were talking. Some believed the story, others thought it was just a coincidence, but a few began to look at Evan differently, as if trying to match him with a past they did not fully understand. Later that day, Evan visited the general store. While he was inside, the shopkeeper mentioned casually, "Funny thing, I think I saw a notice board in the next town with a face like yours." Evan paused for a second. His hand stopped moving near the counter. "Probably many faces like mine out there," he said calmly. But his eyes showed something else for a brief moment. Unease. After buying only a few basic supplies, he left the store quickly. Outside, the wind had started to pick up. Dust moved across the road in small waves. Evan stood there for a moment, looking toward the direction of the next town. It was silent, but his thoughts were not. That evening, as the sun went down again, Evan did not sit in his usual place immediately. Instead, he stood near the edge of town, watching the road that led far away. For the first time since arriving in Dustwood, he felt something he had been avoiding for a long time. It was not danger, it was recognition. Somewhere out there, a part of his past had started to wake up, and it was slowly moving closer to him. The wind over Dustwood felt different the next morning. It was slower, heavier, like the town itself was waiting for something to happen. Evan Cole noticed it as soon as he stepped out from the stables. His horse stood quietly, but even the animal seemed more alert than usual. Evan did not speak. He simply checked the saddle and looked down the empty road that led toward the next town. After the rumors from the previous days, Evan tried to keep his routine normal. He worked, helped people, and avoided long conversations. But inside, he knew something had changed. Dustwood was no longer just a quiet place for him. It was becoming a place where his past might find him. That afternoon, a new traveler arrived in town. He was not a merchant or a simple wanderer. He was a tall man with a calm face and careful steps. He did not rush. He did not look tired. Instead, he looked like someone who had come with a purpose. The stranger did not go to the inn first. He walked directly into town and asked simple questions. He asked about jobs, about travelers, and about a cowboy named Evan Cole. He asked the questions politely, but there was something firm in his voice, like he already knew the answers he was looking for. People in Dustwood were cautious. They answered him slowly, pointing toward the stables without saying too much. Word traveled quickly through the town. Soon, Evan heard that someone was asking about him. Evan stopped what he was doing. For a moment, he just stood still. His hands tightened slightly, then relaxed again. He did not panic, but his calmness had changed. It was no longer peaceful. It was controlled. He walked back to the stables and checked his horse again. The animal moved slightly, sensing his mood. Evan whispered, "Easy," in a soft voice. The Sheriff Miller was informed about the stranger as well. He decided to observe from a distance. Sheriff Miller had learned not to judge quickly, but he also knew when something felt important. By evening, the stranger was seen near the town square again. He was still asking questions, but now more people were refusing to answer. The air around him felt serious, though he never acted rude or threatening. Still, his presence made people uncomfortable. Evan finally saw him when he stepped out to get water. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The stranger nodded slightly. "Evan Cole," he said calmly. Evan did not respond immediately. He looked at the man carefully, studying him as if trying to place a memory. "You have the wrong person," Evan said after a pause. The stranger did not smile. "I don't think I do." Silence followed. People nearby stopped what they were doing, sensing tension in the air. But it was not loud or violent tension. It was the kind that comes from history, not conflict. The stranger continued, "You don't need to run anymore." Evan's expression remained controlled, but something inside him shifted. "I am not running," he replied quietly. The stranger looked at him with steady eyes. "Then why does your past still follow you?" That question stayed in the air longer than the words themselves. Evan turned away slightly, breaking eye contact. "I have nothing to say about the past," he said. But for the first time, his voice sounded less certain. The stranger took a step back, respecting the distance. "I am not here to harm you. I am only here because there is something that needs to be resolved. People from your old life are still affected by what happened, and only you can clear it." Evan remained silent. For a moment, Dustwood felt completely still. Even the wind seemed to stop moving. Later that night, Evan sat with an elderly widow named Mrs. Harper. She was one of the few people in town who never asked too many questions. She simply treated Evan with kindness, no matter how little she knew about him. "You look troubled tonight," she said gently. Evan stared at the ground for a moment. Then he said, "Someone came for me." Mrs. Harper nodded slowly. "From your past?" Evan did not answer immediately. Then he finally said, "I left something behind. Not a place, but a situation. I thought leaving would make it disappear." Mrs. Harper listened quietly. Evan continued, "But it did not disappear. It only waited." The widow looked at him kindly. "Running doesn't erase what's written in memory, son." Her words stayed with him. That night, Evan could not sleep. He stayed near the stables again, but this time he was not looking at the stars. He was looking at the road. The same road the stranger had come from. For the first time since arriving in Dustwood, Evan Cole felt something stronger than fear or confusion. It was responsibility. And slowly, he began to understand that the life he had built in silence might not be enough to protect him from what he had left unfinished. The night over Dustwood was unusually quiet. Even the usual sounds of distant animals and soft wind felt weaker, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Evan Cole stood near the stables, looking down the long, dark road. He had not moved for a long time. His horse shifted behind him, but Evan did not react. The stranger's words from the day before still stayed in his mind. "You don't need to run anymore." That sentence kept repeating in his thoughts like a voice that refused to fade. Evan knew this moment would come sooner or later. He had tried to live quietly, to stay unseen, to rebuild a simple life in Dustwood. But now, the past he had buried was no longer buried. The next morning, the stranger returned. This time, he was not alone. He brought a sealed letter and stood near the town square. People gathered slowly, watching from a distance. The sheriff was also there, observing carefully. Evan walked toward him without rushing. His face was calm, but his eyes showed a different feeling, acceptance mixed with uncertainty. The stranger spoke first. "This is from the people you left behind." Evan looked at the letter but did not take it immediately. "Why now?" he asked quietly. The stranger replied, "Because they cannot move forward until you do." After a long pause, Evan finally took the letter. His hands were steady, but inside, something felt heavy. He did not open it right away. Instead, He stepped away from the crowd and walked toward the edge of town. The wind moved softly again, but this time it felt different. It did not feel empty. It felt like change. That evening, Evan made a decision. He would no longer hide. He called the sheriff, the stranger, and a few respected townspeople together. Under the fading sunlight, he stood in front of them and spoke. "I came here as a quiet man," Evan began, "because I wanted to leave my past behind. I thought silence would fix what happened before. But I was wrong." The people listened carefully. No one interrupted. Evan continued, "I was not a criminal. I did not do anything with bad intention. But I made a decision in my past that affected others. I ran away from the responsibility because I thought distance would erase guilt." His voice stayed calm, but honest. "I understand now that running only delays truth. It does not remove it." The town remained silent. Even the wind seemed to slow again. The stranger stepped forward slightly. "Then what will you do now?" Evan looked at him directly. "I will face it. Whatever needs to be fixed, I will help fix it." There was no fear in his words now, only clarity. The sheriff nodded slowly. "Truth is not always easy, but it matters," he said. The stranger handed Evan the sealed letter again. "This will guide you. It is not about punishment. It is about resolution." Evan finally opened it. His eyes moved slowly as he read. The contents were not harsh or angry. Instead, it described unfinished matters from his past, people who needed answers, and a situation that had never been properly resolved after he left. There was no demand for punishment, only a request for closure. For the first time, Evan felt something unexpected. It was not fear, it was relief. He had imagined his past would come with anger, but instead, it came with a chance to correct what was left broken. That night, Evan returned to the widow, Mrs. Harper. She saw his expression and understood immediately that something had changed. "It seems you have made a decision," she said gently. Evan nodded. "I cannot stay hidden anymore." Mrs. Harper smiled softly. "Then don't think of it as leaving. Think of it as finally finishing what you started." Her words stayed with him. The next morning, Evan prepared to leave Dustwood for a short time. He did not pack much, just his essentials, his horse, and the letter. Before leaving, the townspeople gathered quietly. There was no fear in their eyes anymore, only understanding. They had seen him not as a mystery, but as a human being who carried weight from another time. The sheriff stepped forward. "You are welcome back here when you return," he said. Evan nodded. "I will return." The stranger also spoke one last time. "Not everyone faces their past. You did." Evan did not respond with words. He only gave a small nod. Then he rode out of Dustwood. The road ahead was long, but this time it did not feel like escape. It felt like direction. As he disappeared into the distance, Dustwood slowly returned to its calm life. But something had changed in the town as well. People remembered the quiet cowboy not as a mystery anymore, but as someone who chose truth over silence. And Evan Cole, for the first time in many years, was no longer running from his shadow. He was walking with it, toward something unfinished, but finally facing it with open eyes.